Okay, thank you very much. So, I'm a myrmecologist, and that means I study ants. So what I'm going to talk today about is little things that I think run the world, which are obviously ants. And I'm going to talk to you about how beautiful they are, how interesting they are, and hopefully by the end of the talk, you might think that these things also perhaps run the world. So let's meet the ladies that we're talking about. Here's a selection of some different species of ants. And I say ladies because all worker ants are ladies, which means about 99.99% of all the ants that you will ever see are female. So it's a real girl power society and probably quite apt for midwives. So here are some of the ant species that you can see, and there's an awful lot of ant species. They're very diverse. There's about 12,500 species of ants that are being officially described. That means some scientists have said that this one is different to that one for particular reasons. But people estimate there's about 30,000 ant species altogether. That's quite a lot. Not as much as beetles, but a lot. So there's lots of them, and they look pretty cool. But they're also amazing because they cover a really large area. So if we look at the world, this is taken from a website, antmaps.org. Basically, they've looked at, don't laugh, serious science. People really do this. There's all the countries of the world, and people have worked out how many different ant species you find in each country. And I wanted to show you this, because basically they occur everywhere, pretty much apart from Antarctica and some parts up here that are covered in ice. So ants are everywhere. Brilliant. So they're diverse, they're widespread, and when you do find them, they're really abundant. That means there's lots of individuals. So for instance, if you went to a patch of rainforest, you raked up some leaf litter, and you counted all the individuals you found in there, all the different animals, this is what it would look like in the pie chart. 65% of all those things you found would be ants. And if you did the same in the soil, in the rainforest, there'd be some termites, but still a lot of ants. 45% of all those individuals would be ants. So we know there's lots of species, we know they occur everywhere pretty much, and they're really abundant. So they're a really dominant insect group on the planet. So then begs the question, perhaps you're going, well, that's nice, but what do they do? Well, this beautiful ant here, Plectroptina, she's a specialist predator. So there's several ant species, quite a lot of ant species actually, that are specialist predators. Plectroptina specializes in eating millipedes. That's why her mandible's like this, so she can slice her way through the millipedes. But actually quite a lot of ants are omnivorous like we are, and they're scavengers, just like this Camponotus here. It's come across something it's eating. There are also quite a lot of ants that have special relationships with plants. So many plants, many families of plants, have their seeds dispersed by ants. And these are some Aphenogaster ants, and this is a seed. And this is a special seed designed to be dispersed by ants. And we know that because of this little bit here on top of it. It looks a bit like hair, unfortunately, in this light. But it's something called an elaiosome, which is a bit like a food parcel attached to the seed. And it also acts like a handle, so the ants can pick it up with their mandibles, like that one's doing it, pick it up, carry it off, and then they'll eat it, and they've dispersed the seed. And so they've therefore helped the plant, and they've got a little reward for doing it. So that's pretty neat. There are also other examples of ants interacting with plants. So these are some Pseudomyrmex from South America, and this plant with that on does two things. It provides them a home, so it's got thorns, and they've hollowed it out and can live in the thorn, the little house. And also provides food. These sort of orangey yellow things called Beltian bodies. And it's like little food parcels. So that's great, you've got home and your food. Well, what do the ants do for the plant? Well, they protect the plant. So they would help kill herbivores that might be eating the leaves otherwise. And in some cases, the ants are particularly good and they act like gardeners. So this is the same ant, Pseudomyrmex. And here in the forest where these ones grow, sometimes you'll get other plants that put out tendrils and start trying to overgrow the plant that they might be on. So here's a tendril that's come out, and ants don't like that, so their home will be destroyed, and so they help the plant by doing a spot of gardening. So they go and snip all the tendrils, and therefore help keep their home intact and help the plant grow. Ants are also a bit like humans in the sense that they're farmers. So there's a couple of great examples about ants being farmers. There's one here that if you're a gardener yourself, you might be familiar with, and that's their relationship with aphids, with hemipterans. And so they get food from the hemipterans, something called honeydew, and in return, they protect the hemipterans from being eaten. Perhaps the most famous example of them being farmers is the leafcutter ants from Central and South America. So the leafcutter ants will go out, cut leaves, carry them back to their nests, and then in their nests, they actually grow a fungus on the leaves. They don't eat the leaves, they eat the fungus that grows on the leaves. So it's a bit like us just having mushroom farms. Not really very much difference at all, really, except we don't have to go around collecting leaves. But that's all well and good, so we know there's lots of them, and they go in lots of places, and they seem to do lots of things, but really, how important are they? What would happen in the world if we didn't have any ants? What would happen in our natural environments? How do they interact with other things? And what would happen if we took them out of that system? And how important are they for ecosystem processes? And so that's what I've been interested in my research group and my collaborators. And so we've been trying to address this question, just how important ants are, and whether they run the world, by setting up some very big experiments in a couple of places. So we're doing this in the savannas of South Africa, a bit like this, and also in the rainforests of Borneo, so the Malaysian part of Borneo, Sabah. And here, we set up an experiment where we've gone to patches of forest, and we have applied treatments that mean we can reduce the abundance of ants. So we want to get rid of ants in some patches and keep ants as would normally be in a savanna or a rainforest. So that's exactly what we did. We went out and got rid of our ants. Now we need to check we've been able to do that. So we check using this highly technical method, which is putting out bits of cat food, seeing how many ants come. Ants like eating cat food. They don't normally come across cat food in the rainforest, but full of carbohydrates and proteins. So you put this out, count how many ants are there. It's really quick and easy. So here's a graph for you. This is time since we started our experiment, and this is just telling you how many ants are on those little baits. And you can see at the beginning, they're the same, and then we applied our treatments to reduce the ants, and this plot here, these plots, the ant suppression ones, there's not very many ants, and the control plots, it just bobbles around more or less the same. So we're happy. We reduced the abundance of ants by about 90%. It's looking good. Now we wanted to see what happened. And there's two things I'm going to talk about today. The first one is how the other animals responded to the removal of the ants. So what was quite clear was that some of the animal groups did a lot better when you took the ants out. I remember a lot of them were predators. And the groups that did a lot better were these ones. There were beetles that did a lot better, and lots of different kinds. And then there were a whole lot of decomposer species, groups, millipedes, there were woodlice and snails that did better too. These beetles were in South Africa, ground ones, and these ones here, which I know look ginormous on the screen, in reality they're about 2 to 1.5 millimeters in size. They're tiny little beetles. We don't know very much about them. There's an awful lot of beetles, way more than ants, so it's really hard to know anything about their natural history. We do know that this one is an interesting kind of scarabeus beetle that can roll up into a ball, perhaps to protect itself from ants. It's an idea. This one eats blue-green algae, and it's got these funny flanges that come right down to the side. Again, maybe as protection. Now these ones didn't occur on our plots where we had ants. And then where we took the ants out, suddenly they appeared. And we were quite intrigued by this because we hadn't anticipated this for our experiment. What we thought would happen, so here's our rainforest, is we thought that where we've got lots of ants, there would be some of these beetles, but they would just be in low abundance. And then when we thought that when the ants got taken out, more of them would move in, so we would just have more of those beetles. But these beetles weren't found at all where there were any of our ground ants. They only appeared after we took our ants out. So we're a bit intrigued as to where they could have come from. So currently we're working on the idea that actually these beetles live above the ground, actually in the vegetation, and they can't get down to the ground when the ground ants are there. When you take the ground ants out, they can then move down and then occupy this new area. So this is really interesting to us, that there seems to be this sort of vertical stratification of the vegetation and the fauna in it, and that these things are being held up above the ground, can't get down when those ground ants are down there. The other thing we looked at is how ants affected important processes. And one of them is decomposition. Now decomposition is a process where organic matter breaks down, so it's like bits of dead wood and dead leaves, and they get broken down into smaller and smaller pieces and end up in nutrients in the soil. It's a bit like recycling of the wood and all that organic material. So it's a really important process. And we know that in tropical systems, apart from free-living fungus, termites, these guys here, build these big mounds, are really, really important for this process. The thing is, we also know that ants really like eating termites. So this is a Matabele ants carting them off after they've been raiding. And so we thought, right, so if we take out the ants, perhaps the termites might be better because they're not being eaten all the time. They might quite enjoy life, actually. So we thought we'll try another highly technical experiment, which is putting out toilet rolls. So what you do is you just go and buy about 1,000 toilet rolls, and then people sort of raise their eyebrows at the shop counter, and you explain that you don't have the problem. And then you put them out. And termites like eating them. So toilet rolls are made of paper. Where does paper come from? It comes from trees. Exactly what termites eat. So it's pretty much only termites that eat it. You put them out, and then you go back and see how much has been eaten. And this is what it can look like. So if there's not very much been eaten, about 2% looks like that. And sometimes it's almost entirely all gone. In quite a short space of time, I should add, in just a matter of weeks. And then we score this, according to our special scoring system, again, highly technical. And then we can have a look at whether there's a difference in how much toilet roll gets eaten, which is exactly what we did. And this is only the second graph, the last one. Here are the plots with ants, and here are the ones without any ants, and this is kind of how much they've been eaten, according to our score. And you can see that where we took the ants out, lots more toilet roll is being eaten. So that tells us that there's more termites being more active, and decomposition rates are higher. So we were very excited about this, because everyone thinks termites control decomposition, and what we're saying is actually it's the ants that affect the termites that then affect decomposition. So it's all about ants, really, isn't it? So I just want to finish up going back to this original point here about the little things running the world. And it was actually this chap here, E.O. Wilson, that I defined the term biodiversity. He was the one that said ants are the little things that run the world. Up to now, nobody has tested it. So I think we're making really exciting advances into actually being able to do this. So hopefully next time you see an ant, probably only be summer now, but next time you see an ant, you'll look at it in a slightly different light. So it just remains for me to thank